Ever wonder why your bullets seem to bounce off of enemies? Or why some foes go down in one shot? Enemies in the wasteland have many different weak points and damage types they are resistant to. From Assaultrons only taking 1/3 of the damage to the head, to some enemies being completely immune to certain damage types. Knowing these differences can mean life or death in Appalachia. So in today's video, I'll teach you everything you need to know about enemy weak points and weaknesses in Fallout 76. And at the end, I'll explain a crucial tip about how understanding these resistances can optimize your own armor setup, so you'll definitely want to stay tuned. Starting off with the easiest way to increase your damage, knowing enemy weak points. Most enemy weak points in the wasteland are as obvious as a bad haircut. Some, though, can be tricky or even deceptive. As stated earlier, Assaultrons take less damage to the head, having no true weak point, but its only perceived weak point being an actual hard point. Deathclaws, on the other hand, have a hardened, bone-plated skull. The head is just as weak as the rest of the body, but the actual weak point is the soft underbelly. A quick fun fact is that the Radstag Doe's right head is more susceptible to damage than the left. Being a creature with two heads, I would definitely agree that one is a lot more vulnerable to damage. This difference in damage is not true in the case of the Brahmin though. As for Protectrons, they have no weak point, but like Assaultrons, their head is a hard point. The Sentry Bot's weak point, thankfully, is its fusion core, dealing a massive 20 times more damage than normal. What do you shoot if the target has no head? Well, iBots take increased damage to their back panel. Mr. Handy models, combat inhibitors, and thrusters are their main weak points, while their eyes are a secondary target. When facing the Grafton monster, its blowholes are its weak point. The other giant kaiju, the Mirelurk Queen, has no weak point, but instead has hard points, being any of its arms or its shell. For anyone hunting the cargo bot, its boosters are its main weak point, and its flight systems are a secondary weak point. Strangely, there is no perk to show weak points, so for every weak point listed, I have a link in the description. Now that you know where to hit these creatures, it's time to figure out what is the best type of damage to hit them with. After years of mutating in nuclear fallout, most enemies you will face will most likely be immune to radiation damage. Thankfully, the awareness perk will allow you to see the resistance values of any creature that you lock onto in VATS. Though it is not the most useful always, this perk can be invaluable when facing new enemies in the wasteland, or enemies that just seem a little too tanky. The devs will soon be reworking how resistant enemies are, making knowing this knowledge all the more important. As of making this video, the resistances of human enemies in the wasteland are based off of their randomized armor. This will be updated in the future to give each faction, Raiders, Blood Eagles, and Cultists, more consistent resistances based upon faction. Super mutants are obviously immune to radiation damage. Their thick skin gives them good ballistic resistance, but even greater elemental resistance. Your best bet against these enemies is to use a weapon that deals energy damage. Bethesda logic dictates that robots are immune to poison and radiation. In reality, radiation fries circuitry, but since everything runs off of nuclear energy, I'll let this one slide, Bethesda. So, if you're planning on killing a robot with a gamma gun, plan on being there until either the robot dies or the server shuts down. Most commonly found, the Scorched are immune to radiation, have a higher elemental resistance, but are equally weak to energy and ballistic damage. Now, for the most important thing for every player to know about damage resistance. There are many different varying damage types. Ballistic and energy are the most common, while plasma is a mixture of both types of these damages. Players may overlook the fact that there are elemental damage types as well: cryo, poison, and pyro or fire damage. How damage is calculated in 76 is based upon your damage resistance in each of these. Having zero resistance in any of these while being attacked by said damage type will result in the player taking full damage. For example, if a freezer floater hits you and you have zero cryo resistance, you will be taking 100% of that damage. So, even having 10 damage resistance, or DR, will reduce the damage you take by around 10%. Keep in mind that this calculation is not linear, meaning that the more DR that you have, the lesser the mitigation you gain is. While 10 DR may be enough to reduce your damage by 10%, 300 DR will only result in about 70% damage reduction. A lesser known damage type is explosive damage. Explosive damage generally bypasses a portion of armor DR. Even with extremely high DR, dense mods on chest armor can help in minimizing this damage further. The perk Fireproof can also help to reduce this. And finally, the 2-star legendary armor effect of Hardy will also reduce this as well. This was a lot of information, but I hope it was helpful. If it was helpful, let me know by dropping a like. If I got anything wrong or I missed any crucial information, please help the community by letting us know in the comment section. If you need any help or recommendation with perks, I will leave my video on them in the description. As always, Vault Dwellers, thank you so much for watching.